Okay. Now the RNG of this, everything's been reset. So I'm going to wait until we're in the middle of the darkening of the screen here. So right about here. And then I wait another second or two, and then we start. And then I'll go ahead and start the timer as well.
The Legend of Zelda, a franchise chock full of classic experiences. 2D dimensional juggernauts like A Link to the Past, led to all-time 3D greats like Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and even continues today with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. This classic franchise spans almost 30 games since it debuted almost 40 years ago. Wow. Can we edit that line out? I feel so old. And it all began humbly on the good old NES with The Legend of Zelda, also known as Zelda no Densetsu, the Hyrule Fantasy. Released on the Famicom Disk System back in 1986 and eventually ported via cartridge to the NES, it was the first NES game in North America to use a battery to save your data. This game was never intended to be beaten in a single setting, so the battery allowed you to continue your quest later after homework or school or wait a second, what are you doing there? Oh, certainly you can't beat the game in a single sitting. Oh. Zelda 1 on the NES is a very popular speedrun today, with only the great Mario games and a handful of others eclipsing it in total amount of active runners. With a popular randomizer, numerous tournaments, and even a handful of GDQ runs on the big stage over the years, it continues to be a very popular game to beat quickly. Before we get to the topic of today's story, let's quickly discuss why. What makes Zelda 1 such a special speedrun? Well, it's clearly the swag, of course.
For me, it's just like the fundamentals of the video game are so well polished, and it was like, it came out in a time where video games, they weren't a thing like they were at all today. And it's hard to kind of imagine, like, the things that they were working with at Nintendo at the time. Like, people only made it was a one-person job to make a video game, and Nintendo stepped in and they were like, okay, like, let's get a staff of people to work on a single video game. Like, the music's beautiful.
The dungeon music, that's where you spend most of your time. And that just gets me every time. It just kind of gets me in a mode. Obviously level 9 is a whole different story. When you hit level 9, you know, into dome, and you're like, ah.
The graphics are realistic at the time, and the movement and the combat is so, like, kind of well polished. Things are so almost evenly spread out in the overworld, and it, like, creates this kind of, like, weird situation where you have to collect these things around the map in order to complete the speedrun. Like, things are kind of distributed, like, throughout this kind of world and spread apart, and it's like there are certain things that you require to unlock certain other things, and there's, like, not a necessarily preset order of doing so many things. You know, it's really been years and years of effort into just, like, thinking about how to go about constructing a speedrun. So there's kind of like that, like, happy little accident overworld kind of thing where it's like, yeah, there really is, like, just kind of like this spread apart sort of thing. It's kind of beautiful how it works out, and I guess that's hard to explain why I find that beautiful.
Unlike most NES games, The Legend of Zelda has numerous routes, categories, and options for safeties. Beginners can run the 2 first route, the blue ring route, or even the TDO, or traditional dungeon order glitchless route. Brave explorers that want a challenge can even jump to the 3 first route, or even some of the tougher runs like swordless, damageless, or even blindfolded.
It's easily the #1 speedrun on the NES. Bar none. Just with the huge difference in skill levels that the game allows the community to have, the bajillion of different categories that there are, there's ILs for items. I mean, it's endless. It's endless. Whatever you want to get into.
What I think makes it special, the fact that it just takes so much commitment just for each new plateau that you hit in the game. It really feels like you have to work hard for every PB that you get. I mean, and you know, that's not unique to this game, but it feels like every single time you get to another kind of benchmark, it really, really feels satisfying in this game compared to other games I've played.
I absolutely think it's the best. And the reason is this. It has the best of both worlds. Like, never the same. No matter what you do, the speedrun is never the same. Yeah, you go to the same places, and the enemies are going to start in the same spot, but it's never the same. Not one run of Zelda ever in the history of Zelda has ever been the same. Because as you know, all the enemy movement is random.
This game has a very well-balanced blend of skill, strategy, hand-eye coordination, and reaction.
I think for me, it's like the fundamentals of the game are so good. It's a very difficult game, and it's a very simple game. Yet the skill cap is just so insanely high, so it's always giving you, like, there's always things to work on, there's always ways to improve as long as you're looking.
There are lots of different ways that you can go about the early game. You can really kind of take it as you want to with your bomb counts and your rupee counts, but there's so many different things that can happen.
It feels like the game is alive when you're like reacting to it, and it's so difficult at the same time.
This speedrun is chock full of RNG, however, that make it so amazingly tough to optimize, such as enemy movement, as well as the global item drops, which play heavily into the story we're about to get into. These items are those random drops that enemies leave behind when defeated. These can be tracked and manipulated in the speedrun, as can consecutive drops. You guys remember this guy? Yeah, he was telling us all a speedrun strat all those years ago, and we never even knew it. If you kill 10 enemies in a row without taking damage, the 10th kill drops a guaranteed 5 rupee unless you bomb said enemy. In that case, they will drop a bomb pack instead, allowing you to increase your total bombs by a factor of 3. And this is huge, as bombs are such a big factor in going fast in Zelda 1. Since a good portion of this game is spent underpowered, using bombs to defeat tough enemies like Manhandla, Gorillas, and especially Darknuts make this game much faster and easier.
There's just so much knowledge required, and then to have to sit there and think about everything and also execute all of these really kind of precise strats and movements. It's one of those things where I feel like there's so much dedication that this game takes to get to just each new plateau. It makes it original in a way.
Oh man, it checks so many boxes for me because it's like, there is some part nostalgia because I did grow up with it. The gameplay, it's got like the tricks, and Zelda 1 was one of my favorite games growing up of all time. So there really is just like a lot of wonderful stuff that's like all happening at once. And that's kind of why I like really enjoyed it, really played a lot, and really pushed myself to keep lowering the time. It looks so simple, right? It's like you just move up, down, left, right, and it's just like 2 buttons, like A and B, like nothing that complex, and yet it really turns into this just like wonderfully unique, dynamic experience, similar to like a roguelike. You know, when you're playing a game that's just like has different things that keep happening, even in like a speedrun situation where you're doing things over and over and over in the same way, it's gonna be a different experience every time.
Since speed is the name of the game in a speedrun, controlling your bomb count is very important here. We can manipulate the force bombs easily enough, but this speedrun was always going to be hindered by the one thing we cannot control. At least that's what we thought.
Just speaking specifically on the level 3 grind, it's like, you know, it sucks resetting all those times just for that bomb. You can play the game exactly like you're supposed to. And, you know, especially if you're doing a non-manip situation, you have zero control whether you get through it or not. You can do the same thing every time and it doesn't work. It's very frustrating on that part. You have no say-so whatsoever if you get through 3 or not, and depending if you get through 3 fast. You get in there, you get your bomb, and then you don't get the good pattern on the second factor, the Darkness before the raft. It's like, well, do I sit here and reset for more bad RNG on the first bomb, or do I just take it and go with it? Then you get to Manhandla, and then You know, it's Panhandle either dies or it doesn't. Thankfully, it's in the first 2 minutes of the run, so finally we got out 3. That's why I didn't mind resetting it over and over. It was only 2 minutes of a 30-minute speed run. But when you get it and everything works perfect, it's like the best feeling in the world.
See, for years, Zelda speedrunners couldn't start a run without doing this over and over. This could go on for literally hours. In the Dark Ages BM, you know, before Manip, we would kill a Dark Nut, and if they didn't drop a bomb, we'd reset, scroll to 3, kill a Dark Nut, reset, do it again. And even when we got that first bomb, we'd still have to deal with another room we call Factor 2. These 5 red Dark Nuts wander all over the place and makes it very hard to finish them off. At best, you were able to get them with one big bomb, and then hopefully get a bomb drop off of them for the final big RNG factor in level 3, Manhandle. This beast enemy is intended to be beaten with a blue ring and a white sword, or a bomb. The problem is we only have 3 hearts and a wooden sword, so if you miss or run out of bombs, yeah. This meant that when you finally got out of level 3, it was go time. Sometimes we would run runs that had really slow starts. I mean, for years, Lack Attack's previous world record of 28 minutes and 50 seconds stood, despite having a 2 minute and 20 second level 3, which, to be fair, is considered slow for most top runners. But without Manip, we would take what we could get. And despite leaving time on the table, we would just run it if we got out of level 3 with resources.
Oh, that's funny.
The time wasn't the big factor, though. It was the lack of opportunity that hurt the speedrun.
The thing about level 3 pre-Manip was, for people going for a really, really good time, it made it so frustrating because there was such a wide range of times that you could get out of 3, and it was just solely luck-based. There was very little that was under your control, whether you got out at 209 or you got out at 225. The game can just tell you no, and it usually does. So people going for elite times, if they're not using luck manipulation at the beginning, it can be very very frustrating, and it gets to you over time.
I don't know, you just kind of accept it. You know, it's just part of the game. If you're in 3 for 2 hours, I mean, well, you know, our day at the office, you know what I mean?
Having to reset over and over for what felt like forever would tire you out, it stressed your hands, and it bored your chat. You'd fall into what I called the level 3 blues, or reset hell, or whatever you want to call it.
Oh man, it's terrible. Because you feel bad when you do get good luck, because you kind of like, you could still mess it up. It was terrible. It's terrible. It's like either you feel bad because you're taking a bad time, or you're nervous because you finally got a good time. Like, it's just like you never felt like you were in control, because there's just like a lot of RNG elements with bomb drops and with Manhandle and Darknet patterns. Like those 3 things they would just add up so much, and it's just like the beginning of the run. It was difficult to get through because it's like you're front loading a lot of the RNG on the early part of the speedrun, and so you would play the same dungeon over and over again to try to get it. You know, when you got to the level where you needed the first bomb drop in level 3, it's like, okay, well, I have to now reset 59% of my runs automatically, and those are the runs that are getting there quickly. So it's just like,
you reset, you get bored, you start talking about random stuff. I have to credit Unos. Oops! I have to credit Unos for that. Get distracted. You make more mistakes. It's just this negative feedback loop of sorts.
I think me and Antlers had a contest one time of how many times we went killing that first Dark Knight without getting that bomb. And we were up to 17 to 18 times in a row one time, so. And
as your time gets higher up the leaderboards and you need a faster start in order to compete, you had to push harder and harder. People started looking at the top route, an alternative route in level 3. hoping for more consistency at the cost of a tiny bit of time. But the faster you got, the more and more likely you were going to have to reset anyways. And this made it a very difficult game to grind. A lot of folks would get burned out on the game and just stop running it altogether, which made the top of the leaderboard pretty stale. And I was no different. Once I achieved my first sub 29 time, putting me just a few seconds away from the world record at the time, I didn't want to keep going. I was sick of this speed run. I was sick of the resets, sick of the grind. But every so often, because I loved the speed run so much, I'd boot it up and run it for fun. And one day, back in 2019, I did that very thing. In that stream, another Zelda 1 speedrunner, my good friend TheDoctorBlue, joined me in my chat room.
So I honestly don't remember how the Darkwing Duck bomb came up. I was aware of it before because I've perused Red Candle, which goes into like depth on how they analyzed the game's RNG at that point, and how Darkwing Duck was playing around with a theory that if you entered level 3 at a certain time from game startup, you could give yourself a better chance at finding a bomb. Not a guarantee, but it was one of those based on the numbers that were crunched and based on feeling to a degree. If you sat on the start screen for a little bit, then you went into the game kind of on a regular cadence every time you started up, you could probably get a bomb more often. So from that jumping off point, that got me thinking, well, can we narrow that queue down closer to where you actually get your first bomb? And you were probably just resetting, trying to get to level 3 and trying to get through it with a decent time or something. And I was in your chat watching your stream, and I was wondering, well, what if you just use the music of the overworld? Because you could always do that. You can always get to the door of level 3. I posed the question in chat. What if you just sat there until a specific music cue?
I got gridded, so I don't know if this is gonna work or not. Honestly, I don't know if getting gridded to the sword matters either. I mean, yeah, it might change the tech type pattern, but the tech type pattern is more of a tell than anything. It doesn't really matter.
Could you then enter level 3, perfectly move through, a couple rooms, and then just always kill a Dark Nut or something like that on a perfect frame? Because we also knew that the game's internal RNG resets perfectly every time you reset the game. It always has the same starting point, which meant if you somehow figured out, at the 1000th frame of the game, if you killed a Dark Nut, it would give you a bomb guaranteed every time.
Oh my god. Oh my god, it's working! 4 swords, 4 swords! Come on, baby. Atomic me! Oh no! Oh, so close, dude! I dropped the bomb like a pixel too late! Dude! I'm satisfied right there. There it is. That day I began messing with the overworld, just trying to see how realistic this was. And once I went into the wood sword cave, I realized something, a huge breakthrough. One that I'm pretty sure testers and coders probably already knew, maybe even some other speedrunners. But as a top speedrunner, I did not. The Legend of Zelda has frame rules. Frame rules are programming checks that are only done on a consistent multi-frame schedule. You can see this in games such as Super Mario Bros.
A bus leaves the station from one level to the next, and Mario must ride a bus to get to the next level. So every 0.35 seconds, a bus leaves over and over and over again, forever and ever. So when you beat a level, Mario has to wait for the next bus to depart. So that means if he beats a level, if he enters the castle right before a bus leaves, then he can get on it and he doesn't have to wait very long. But if he just misses a bus, then he has to wait for the next one to leave.
Or entering a cave in The Legend of Zelda. When you enter these style caves, the game will check every 4 frames to see if you've entered the cave. If you have, the game loads the area. And this means that every time you enter a cave, you're entering on a 4 frame rule, which makes the target to stay frame perfect 1/15 a second. and this is way more realistic to do for a human being, especially a speedrunner who is used to the 1/60th second reaction time that a frame-perfect trick on the NES typically requires. There was just one tiny problem. Screen scrolls. Screen scrolls are glitches that abuse the grid movement system in the game and allow a runner to teleport across the map of the game. Only possible in the overworld, we can use this trick to quickly get into level 3. Now, as a top runner, not using the screen scroll is just not an option, because going around is much too slow. But how could you possibly stay frame perfect while doing such a difficult trick? It's not possible, right? Well, fortunately for us, exiting the wooden sword cave resets the overworld music, and the music stays in sync with the frame rate in Zelda 1. What this means is that if you enter level 3 on a specific note in the song, you are guaranteed to be on the same frame each time.
I know you spent tens of hours labbing all of this out, getting all the patterns down, figuring out the frame rule concept. You don't have to be frame perfect, you can get within 4. And 4 out of 60, like you said, for players that are used to having to hit a frame perfect window, like screen scrolling is like that, for example. Well, now something is possible.
The first thing I had to figure out was how to recognize if I did the entry into 3 correctly. A 4-frame window is big in the sense of speedrunning, but it's still extremely tight in practice. Fortunately for us, the dark nuts we need to kill are only a couple rooms into the dungeon, and there's a few rooms full of enemies called Zols that we have to get past, but we don't need to kill them. Their patterns are a tell for which RNG pattern we've achieved. Now, there's one last thing you need to know about Zelda RNG. The frame rules have what I like to call an A side and a B side. If you're not already familiar with this, I'll give you the layman's Cliff Notes version. If you look carefully at Link's hair right now, you'll see a little orange arrow. Watch what happens when I unpause it. You see how the arrow went all the way across the room right there? That is anti-Link. Anti-Link is the exact opposite of the entire screen, not just the play area, but counting the HUD. When the targeting switches in the run, it changes the RNG that we see. Despite being frame perfect, we might get a different pattern than what we're expecting. So we have to be ready for both variants. The first frame rule we aim for has 2 variants, Nutter Butter and Steak Sauce. The second frame rule we aim for has 2 more, 4 Swords and Internet. Yes, I know these names are funny. The story behind them is that when I first discovered these, I was just calling these patterns by their Zol patterns. Left, right, left, up, left, right, etc. The names I came up with were simply a mnemonic just to help me remember what to do in order to execute the manip. For example, Nutter Butter is simply called that because if you don't stab this dark nut in the butt, he'll come up and get you. So to remember that, stab the nut in the butt. Nutter Butter. Those original strategies for all 4 patterns have long since changed, but the names have stuck. Even now, I'm still convinced that there's probably better patterns out there than these 4. Perhaps you can find the newest Zelda 1 pattern that might be even faster or easier than the current strategies you can see in the world record.
I think that the underrated thing that it did for me is help me to better understand the way the grid works and movement of Link. So I notice it a lot outside of 3 and even in Z1R that my movement is much cleaner, where I'm staying much more tied to the grid because with the manip you get a deep understanding for the way that that grid works and the way that Link moves.
In Zelda 1, movement is much harder than it appears because the game is built on a grid movement system. Link can only move on full tiles or half tiles. If you try to move in between, it'll either suck Link onto the next half tile or full tile, or in some cases, it'll stick Link back onto the previous one. You see this often in casual play as folks seem to jitter all over the place. Now, if you're trying to stay in frame perfect, this is bad because it costs you frames. Fortunately, we can use buffers in a lot of the movement in this game to easily get through areas, making it even easier to stay on target. And this has a nice side effect because once you learn how to keep from getting gridded, as we call it in the community, you can improve your movement throughout the run, making it much easier to save time all the way through your speedrun.
You are the person that's in control of the speedrun. You know, you are the person that, as long as you're doing these actions correctly in the right order and you're walking correctly, you are in control of what is basically one of the hardest points of the speedrun, and one of the worst grinding sections of the speedrun was the first 2 minutes. So it changed the game. It changed the speedrunning game in in a really great way. It made it more fun. It was more exciting because you're getting lower times more often as well. You're getting out of 3 a lot quicker. So you're getting those like super good 3s all the time now, depending on how good you are at doing the Manip or how consistent you are. It really opened the speed run up for anyone that practiced it and started doing it.
The Manip was initially intended to just go after this Darkwing Duck bomb, and although it did accomplish this, it quickly grew into more. That exact same day, I discovered that not only could I get that first bomb consistently, but you could set up a guaranteed atomic bomb in the second factor as well. This grew and grew, and today we can manipulate not only all the way through Manhandla, but even into level 4 to the ladder, and potentially even further beyond. We've already discovered that you can manipulate the money-making game in a no-up A run, which allows for new routes. Should be a mid. Let's go! We just did it! First time ever in a run! Theoretically, we've already manipulated to the recorder in 5, and while there are additional challenges to taking the Manip to the end of the game, who knows what other possibilities might open up in the future.
It definitely guarantees a good time, but it's not just the good time that you get, but it's also just the amount of runs that you're able to play out of 30. You see a lot more of the game when you get out of level 3 more consistently, meaning you're getting practice at other levels and not just banging your head against the level 3 wall. So in that way, I think that's even a bigger impact of having the time be really good out of 3. It's just the frequency of runs that you get. You get much better. It makes you much better at the rest of the game when you're able to play it more often.
It was never about the time for me. I switched way early. Like, I did not need those seconds, but what it did do is, after a while, after getting good at it, it got you out of level 3 consistently. So I mean, literally could save 6 hours of nothing. You could literally stream for 6 hours and not even leave the first level of the speed run, and that happened a lot. And what the Manips did is make it so that didn't happen. So if people would say you're just, what are you doing? You have 3 minutes to save and here, like it wasn't about that. It wasn't about
I hate that room lately, man.
I mean, it was cool. It was nice to have a really fast level 3, but that's not even what it was about. And that's what I tried to explain to people, is that it was absolutely about the consistency of being able to leave that level and not being stuck there for hours on end because, you can't get a bomb or you don't think it's quite, whatever. And if that wouldn't have happened, I think I was frustrated enough. That's an interesting question, where my trajectory would be, because almost everything is stemmed off of sticking with that game. My friend circles, the randomizer, even branching off into Zelda 2 a little bit. If I never decided to say, all right, I'm going to try these Manips, and now I got mad, then, you could say a lot would be different. I could not be streaming, for one, because it was pretty frustrating. And I could have just been like, all right, I'm done with this. And it didn't. The success I had with that game, which, was a big part to those Manips, is kind of what kept me not only going like speed, but that was my first ever run. First ever game speedrunning in my life was this game. I've never done anything like this before. I was actually brand new to Twitch even. So you could kind of say it snowballed into, making me enjoy, this whole thing we do here. It's kind of deep, man. I didn't think about all that. It's kind of deep.
When the Manip was found, the world record was 28 minutes and 17 seconds by Lack Attack. RC Drone was the first person in almost 5 years to hold the record other than Lack, when he got his 28:15.
I'm the greatest of all time!
As of this script writing, this happens to be the final world record that did not have the Manip in it. Lack retook the record a few months later, and this was the first world record that had a Manip level 3. And this began a trend, where the Manip allowed Lack Attack, Shixal, and Green Mario to decimate the Zelda 1 world record. Lack's old world record of 28:50 was set in December 2015, and it took almost 5 years to drop below 28 when he got the first 27 in October 2020 with the Manip. Now the record sits at 27:47 by Green Mario, the world record having dropped 30 seconds since the Manip was discovered.
I definitely think we would have one without the Manip, and by far, I honestly do. I think the Manip helped motivate people to keep playing, because it's very hard to start off the run on a high level, so it helped people finish more runs, and finishing more runs yields more records, which it did in this case. And I honestly think Shixel, Lack, or Green Mario could have got the sub 28 without Manips. I honestly think they could have. It just made it a lot more feasible to do it with the Manips.
Well, certainly we wouldn't be where we are today. Outside of the Manip, the times you would get for 3, you could get them, your gold would probably be like a 205 or a 204. And then the fact that you're getting those times almost every time eliminated the 15 seconds of RNG in level 3 at the very beginning of the speedrun. Essentially, the Manip shaved off about 15 seconds of the run. I mean, that might be like a modest estimate as well, but like, not only did it just shave off free time, it allowed you to get more runs out of 3 more consistently. So the number of runs you were getting to level 4, 5, to level 9 increased substantially. So those 2 things automatically, like the time you're saving and then the consistency of getting more, let's say, dice rolls to level 9 where it's like you got better RNG and got a better time. How much do you equate for all of that? You're getting more runs to the end of the game. So yeah, I mean, the Manip was just, I mean, that was a big part of why the time got lowered so quickly or why it continued to get lowered.
Although the prospect of a frame-perfect level 3 seems difficult, with practice it's arguably much easier than executing a natural level 3, at least in my opinion. It's not even close.
I think less about free time and more about just free consistency. But at least I can go and die in 4. 3 is pretty much free with the Manip.
So not only is the Manip easier, but you'll get more runs out of 3 as well, which makes the sample size of attempts a runner can do in their spare time even higher. This gives a runner more chances to PB, and this drives the time down even further and further. Now, I can't speak for Green Mario, Antlers, or anyone else, but I can say this. For myself, I was quite satisfied with the prospect of walking away with my 2858 because I was tired of the level 3 blues. I was certain I was close to being finished with the speedrun. But once I discovered not only that the Manip was easy to do, but faster and more consistent than a non-Manip 3, I realized that I no longer dreaded running this game. I mean, I wanted to run it more. Because of this, I was able to push my own time down further, and I still want to keep pushing it.
For me, I think I kind of see it as a sort of big picture type of thing where it really just takes one person's kind of, like, for example, I'm going to take something a little bit out of context and personal and just talk about myself for a sec. If I wanted to keep lowering like the 2747, like, I know I could, and it would just take like a lot of effort, right? It would be extremely difficult, and it would take a lot of effort, and it can continuously be lowered. All it really takes is one person to have that mentality to push that type of strategy, and that's all it takes. All it takes is just one person doing it. Will that person emerge one day? Maybe. I don't know.
There's always going to be somebody better than somebody in everything. Nobody is the best forever. Just like Darkwing had it forever, then Lack came along, then RC Drone, then Shixel, then Green Mario, and there's going to be somebody to beat those times too eventually. It could be anybody, somebody who hasn't even started the game yet. It could be you watching this video right now. You could be doing it. You just don't know it yet.
Until the Manip was discovered, the worst part of Zelda 1 speedruns was easily level 3. In my opinion, the other RNG-heavy parts were still a real big adrenaline rush and felt like they weren't as integral to a fast run as that beginning split, because a bad level 3 set a bad tone for the entire run. And if you lost a run that had a fast 3, that hurt a lot. Now it's no big deal. Losing a fast start feels more like an inconvenience than a big blow, and that pushed the failure point back much further. Now, I can't say for certain we wouldn't have seen a 27 without Manip, but we still haven't seen one, and I don't think we ever will. RC Drone's former world record will likely be the fastest non-Manip time we will ever see, because all of the top runners will continue using the manipulation, and why wouldn't they? It's consistent, fast, and reliable. It's also a lot of fun too. And so is the rest of this speedrun. The manips have even started to be implemented in other categories, such as Second Quest, where Shixal has come up with ways to get a guaranteed bomb outside of level 2. Unos has already mastered the art of the money-making game manipulation in true any % categories and TDO glitchless. But now we figured out how to do the same thing in 3 first no up A routes with the Mamba, which forces 2 5 rupee drops and uses a HUD warp to get the blue candle early. In fact, that's one of my favorite things about this speedrun. The manip has really helped the community to band together in ways no other strat really ever has. We've all put in work to help improve it. Now the Zelda 1 run is one that I feel runners can't quite put down for long, because it's a fun, dynamic, and exciting speedrun, and there's still enough time that you'll never see it get optimized to the levels of a Mario, Mega Man, or Castlevania. And it already was that before the manip. It was already one of the greats. But now I think I can say it with certainty, at least in my opinion. Zelda 1 is the best speedrun on the NES today. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel for more speedrun content, and I thank you very much for watching.